Hello? This appears to be not a thing. Greg, I'm so sorry. We might have to reschedule you.
Okay, no problem.
No, I'm really sorry. We've tried so hard to get you on today, and my internet is dying.
It's okay. I understand. Like technology problems happen. Don't stress. We'll figure it out.
I'm stressed, but
I I
anyway, I
I
will.
know. Like worry about it for you, not for me.
Well, thank you. You were very generous to give us some time today. I'm not even sure we're live on any platform right now. It looks like YouTube ended our stream, LinkedIn killed the stream. So let me see
Okay.
if we're live on anything right now. It's not good.
No, they killed it.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I would say I'll reschedule you for the new year.
You're
I'm
live on
so
YouTube.
sorry.
Yes, they're saying.
You're live on
You have a comment.
YouTube.
You're live on
Third
YouTube.
link.
Third different
Yeah.
link.
Wow, we have some really dedicated people here.
Yeah, Anna Lucia.
Yeah, she's a fan. All right, let me just check our stream on YouTube. Oh, okay, it's live. All right, let's
Okay.
scrape through this as best as we can.
All right, let's barrel through.
Man, oh man, I am so sorry. Uh, new question. We need a fresh new world here. Okay.
Yes.
All right, let me grab the next question. This was question 3, and let's put it up. I can't believe LinkedIn is working. They're usually the first to kill my stream. Thanks everybody for sticking with us. Gary, Rima, Uger, Ana Lucia, and others. This question came in anonymously and says, I've been feeling lost in UX research and I'm not sure I'm doing things correctly. Also, I don't feel as important as visual designers or developers. What's your advice for me?
Wow. That's a big, deep question. Um, First, I would say that, I mean, the first thing that I would want to do if I was really spending some time in mentoring this person is ask some follow up questions here. So,
Right.
the first thing I'm going to encourage you to do, anonymous user, is to find somebody in your life who's in UX, maybe you look up to, and have this conversation with them as well. Because there are many questions I would like to ask you. You know, why is it that you're feeling lost? Do you feel like you're not making an impact? Do you feel like you're not growing as a researcher? Do you feel like you just don't like research, which maybe you don't? Maybe that's fair. Maybe you should try something else. I don't know any of that. So it's hard for me to say without any of that context what you should do. Uh, that said, let me try and pump you up about UX research for a bit. Uh, I think that there are few roles few jobs that we get to do in current modern life that allow us to just be learners about human behavior all the time and to try and do something with that. To me, that's very powerful, and that's what keeps me doing this work. Is every day I really do learn something different about people and about how they do things and how they use things and how they think. Every day I try and grow in the skills that I have, whether that is learning a new tool or learning a new method um, or just getting better at working with people, managing stakeholders, doing presentations, any of that. It's all learning, and my job is to learn and to teach, and I think that's really valuable. Um, I suspect right now, if you're feeling lost in UX research, it's probably because you feel like you're not making a huge impact. Um, if you're more junior in your UX research career, I would just encourage you to keep going with what you're doing, because sometimes it's just about timing. And you will find a project where you are making such an impact, and you'll really feel it. When it comes to you don't feel as important as visual designers or developers, here's candid, spicy Greg for you. I think that at most companies, most, not all, you are correct. Visual designers and developers are more prestigious, or can have faster career acceleration, or are the voice in the room more often. So I don't want to start this by saying you're wrong or you're incorrect to feel that way, because there are many researchers who feel that way, or who get passed over for opportunities for visual designers or developers. My advice to you, you're not going to like the first advice, which is resilience, but gosh, it's really important. This is something that I struggle with as well, and a lot of people do. And I keep going back to, that's the reason that I do my job, is to do work that I'm proud of. Right? And I understand that sometimes it won't be heard in its totality. Sometimes it won't be accepted in its totality. Sometimes somebody else's opinion is going to appear more important than mine. And right, the theme song of this AMA is Low Ego Action Hero, and I think that's a really good sentiment for this exact thing. Is I am not always the most important person in the room, or viewed as the most important person in the room, and I try and go in as a low ego action hero. Right, that's fine. I don't have to be the most important person in the room. I don't have to be the person everyone listens to in the room. The way I try and combat that is by having really deep individual relationships with the people that I work with. Because that means that in a room of 10 or 15 people, even if I'm not the person who is the loudest or being heard the most, I often have people follow up with me either before meetings or after meetings, say, what were your thoughts? How should we be thinking about this? I know that so-and-so, was on this page, but where are you at? And having those individual one-on-one relationships with people, being the nicest person to work with in the room, will go a long way. I'll pause there. What do you think, Debbie? Have I given you enough time to fix your tech problems? No.
If we're streaming, my tech problems are technically fixed. So thank you. Yeah, I was just we were getting more questions in, so I was trying to paste them in and get them ready and hope we get to them. And thanks to everybody's patience with my technical problems. So I think that it's true that companies tend to value visual designers or developers more, but that's only because their work is more immediately tangible. When a visual designer puts a screen together, we can look at it and say, this looks good, this looks bad, this fits our company brand, this doesn't fit our company brand. And so we have that kind of immediate reaction to it. When a developer codes something, they can run some tests on it and say, this worked, this didn't work, my code is buggy, my code seems to not be buggy, and we have that immediate feedback. The issue with UX, and where a lot of people get a little bit lost in what the value is what are the results and when will we see them? Because we don't know. And the reality, and what I'm trying to remind everybody, is that the user experience or the customer experience is all we have. And those are the fruits of our labors. If we design something that fails or does poorly or doesn't meet our KPIs or something else, that could be partially our fault. If it's not a technical problem where we could point at the developers, that's probably a UX problem. Now, of course, from there, we have to ask bigger questions like, did we get the time we needed to do a better job? Did we get the resources we needed to do a better job? But I want to be held accountable, because then I can speak to those and go, yeah, what I built didn't work out, but guess what? You didn't give me enough time to do a good job, and you hired me to do a good job. So I think we have to remind companies sometimes in a non-evangelistic basic way, that the value of our work, yes, it's not seen the second we do it, but it's in all of the results that we get. Every positive and negative result that we get that isn't a technical or technological issue is probably our work, whether it's the research that set us up for success or research that set us up to guess and assume and throw darts at a board, or not enough research or bad research, or I'll just call 3 customers and ask them what they like. You know, all of this is stuff that even if we didn't do the work, let's imagine a company has no UX people and the product manager is going to call up 3 customers, ask them what they want, and design something themselves. They still won't know until they do usability testing or get it out there. Sarah Raven says, hello, Greg. So,
Hi, Sarah.
So it's not, the main thing I want this person to know is it's not you. It's, to me, it's a combination of companies still not understanding what we do, but yet opening jobs for us. And then some of the leaders who we have, Greg not included, who are not as strong as they could be in making sure that companies understand where that value is and how some of that value is immediate in saving us from mistakes and bad decisions. And some of that value comes later when we see how customers react to things. So if you're not doing UX research correctly, as the start of your question says, you need a coach, you need a mentor, you need somebody who's going to look at your work and be one-on-one and be able to say, this is going well, this is not going well, or try this, or oops, looks like you haven't learned this yet. That would be my suggestion there. Ana Lucia says, it's hard to keep our spirits up nowadays after all these layoffs. I'm not sure if my vision is biased. My network is pretty much UX, but it feels like UX, especially UX researchers, is one of the first being laid off, as if other people didn't see value in having UX research in their company. I think a lot of UX people are being laid off for a lot of mostly not good reasons. So yes, it's a tough time for all of us. It's a tough time to try to stay hopeful. And I'm just telling everybody, do what you can for your own mental health and do what you can to make the money you need to live, even if it's not a dream job or a great job or a UX job. Right now, you might be in survival mode, and that's okay too. Greg, anything to add?
Yeah, I do. I know it's hard to keep spirits up. I do think that having seen some of the overall industry UX numbers, I understand jobs are down, especially in the tech sector over the last year and a half holistically, but they're still flat, relatively speaking, if you look at about a 5-year average. And so I do still think there's a positive outreach to be had here about the UX industry in general. I think that, in my opinion, maybe this is countervailing to the common kind of UX talking points here in the industry. I think we had a bit of a bubble, right? Like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I think that COVID did some weird things to the UX industry, created a different work from home mentality that really lent itself to kind of UX work. And I think that our bubble kind of burst a little bit, and people felt that. But I don't think that if you look at overall UX job trends, it's not like we're down 80-90% or anything from 5 years ago. So I think there are still roles, there are companies that are investing in UX work holistically, and I am still optimistic that moving forward 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the industry is going to continue to be strong in that sense.
Hope so. Hope you're right. The next question was a little weird, so I've been back channeling with this person on LinkedIn, and I did a little bit of Googling. So if this is a term you are also unfamiliar with, since I hadn't heard this, I can read you some stuff from Wikipedia. And Uger asked, what is, for you, the difference between customer development, which I had to Google, and user or market research? Have you heard customer development?
I I know those words independently. I
Right.
can make some guesses about what they mean together, but why don't you educate me?
I'm educating myself as well.
Right?
I'm just going to kind of take
Like
us off.
customer acquisition? Is that what we're
No,
talking
it's
about?
kind of weird. I'm going to take you off the screen for a moment, which might accidentally mute
Yeah.
you, and I'll read this out loud and then I'll bring us back. So let me share my screen, and this is what I found on Wikipedia. The customer development method consists of 4 steps that are designed to help avoid common pitfalls and repeat successful business strategies. 1. Customer discovery first captures the founder's vision and turns it into a series of business model hypotheses. Then it develops a plan to test customer reactions to those hypotheses and turn them into facts. 2. Customer validation tests whether the resulting business model is repeatable and scalable. Oh, yeah, everybody make notes. This is going to be an ugly one. If not, founders should return to customer discovery. And again, this is a definition of discovery I have not usually seen. Number 3, customer creation is the start of execution. It builds end user demand and drives it into the sales channel to scale the business. Step 4, company building transitions the organization from a startup to a company focused on executing a validated model. That was pretty surreal for me. Greg?
Okay. Yeah. I mean, first of all, it looked like I would have to do some more research on this. It looks like this comes from a larger book, kind of a business development book. Um, I mean, first, I would have to spend some more time trying to understand that. But candidly,
It
from the
looks like it's
brief
from the 90s.
explanation that we've read, okay. But I mean, here's my maybe controversial statement here is that doesn't really in essence it doesn't really sound that different from kind of human-centered design in its capacities. Like, think about what the goal is for the company, think about what the needs are for the customers, think about if it's scalable for the business. I mean, this is desirability, viability, and feasibility stuff is what we're talking about here. um, and so I think that, sure, they're probably different. This one seems to take a more business purpose focused approach first, and that's fine. It's just a different model. But I see a lot of overlaps and similarities between this customer development approach and kind of human centered design holistically. I guess the question was user and market research specifically. I think user research and market research are actually two different but connected things as well. Um, I would say the difference between customer development and user market research is that it looked like from that explanation, user and market research but was just a part of the full customer development process, right? That customer development process kind of started with what is the vision of the company, then do some user and market research to see if there's a fit between what you want to do and what the customers, it's just product market fit. Um, and then is it scalable across the business? So I think they're connected. It's an interesting question. I'd have to read more about
Yeah,
customer
we're trying to
development.
speak to something we're both seeing
Yep.
for the first time. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen because I think I actually see this completely oppositely from how you see it. So this
Oh,
is
okay.
super, that doesn't mean either of us is right or wrong, but this is how I saw it. Customer discovery first captures a founder's vision and turns it into business model hypothesis. I think this is pretty common for startups and smaller businesses, which is, hey, I have this idea.
Yeah.
We're going to make this thing for these people, and this is how I think we're going to make money. So this is my vision, and this is my business model hypothesis. But it doesn't seem to require that there's any research here. It says that this is that a plan to test customer reactions to your business model hypothesis is your customer discovery. So, hey, we think we want
Can
to
you hear
make
me,
an.
Debbie?
Yes,
Well,
I do hear you.
I think that I think that's right in that 4-step process. But even just reading that customer development manifesto that it came from, I mean, the steps that they lay out. The first one is get outside, right? And you talk about no business. Number 5, no plan survives first contact with customers. design experiments. I mean, you go through these 14 steps, and a lot of them are about trying to understand how the customer is going to react to this.
I can
I mean,
only
I'm
say
very
I
familiar with the
wish.
business model canvas. Yeah, and that's true. Like, if this is from the 90s as well, the 90s wasn't a time that was full of people saying, go interview your customer. So it was a time full of go figure out what's profitable for your business. But the business model canvas that you see highlighted there is a tool that is meant to facilitate a strategic understanding of business need and customer need holistically together. That is the point of the business model canvas. But it's more of an MBA tool for human centered design.
Yeah, see, I would probably end up completely disagreeing with you on this stuff only because I think that I know it sounds so funny because it's just written here and it's like how can you
Yeah.
disagree? My thought is I see a lot of these things, but then I see how they end up manifesting because the business model canvas tends to focus on pretty much the things you're seeing here, like what's your vision and what's your products and services and what's your business model and what's your value proposition, and then they'll say like how does the user benefit from that. But you're not necessarily, it's not guaranteed that you're starting with any sort of user or customer need. This can be a solution in search of a problem or in search of an audience. And so I think my general impression of this, and we can move on to a different question, is just that this doesn't guarantee human centricity. It doesn't guarantee that we've done any generative or qualitative research with people. It sounds like we're mostly meeting customers to try to test our business model hypothesis in some way. I mean, just because it says no business plan survives first contact with customers, use a business model canvas, they're talking about the business plan, which again makes me think this is the business model and that you're somehow, it sounds like you're going to be doing some sort of market style research to figure out, do people like the sound of your business model? Again, it's tough because we're reacting to something we're not experts on.
Yeah, we're reacting to a Wikipedia article of a book that we haven't read. So I think
Totally.
maybe
We might as well react to a chat GPT summary of a thing,
Yeah.
of a thing, of a thing. So we don't totally know. But I think, look, in my dreamy dream world, everything Greg said is true. In my dreamy dream world, all of this stuff came from good customer interactions, good target user research, and not just, I have an idea, can we pretend to validate that and find someone who might pay for it? But I don't feel like we're guaranteed that just from the way it's written and possibly the time from which it came. Would those people say, oh yeah, make sure you've met black users and gay users and disabled users? If it's from the 90s, it might be like, go find a couple of guys with money.
Not sure.
Who we could, right, exactly. We don't freaking know. So, Uger, I think you and I are going to have to continue this one offline or at least off the show and over on LinkedIn. Uger says it was in a product management course on LinkedIn and they were trying to compare it to market research.
Okay.
Good luck. Yes. So next we have a really interesting question, a little on the long side, but we encourage that. We encourage people to express themselves. Yeah, this one says, as a junior UI UX designer, I'm currently in the process of learning how to utilize ISO and IEC standards. I've taken the time to read IEC 62366-1, Medical Devices Part 1, Application of Usability Engineering to Medical Devices, and I'm currently using ISO 24974 for risk management, which requires familiarity with IEC 62366-2. I often find myself reading through the standards without retaining the essential information. During the conference in Quebec, Debbie, you mentioned that as UX designers, we should consider these standards. How would you recommend approaching the learning of these standards? Okay, so I didn't mean these standards, but I did talk about how there is human-centered design in ISO, but it's none of the ones you mentioned. Greg, thoughts on ISO and IEC and how we bring them into our practice?
Oh, gee, I mean, this is quite a technical question here. Let me first start with how to retain essential information.
Super.
Because although I have not read through all of these one by one and tried to retain all the information, I'm going to take some learnings from my former life a recovering attorney. So when I was
We
in law
support
school,
you.
right, you could imagine that, gosh, I spent a lot of time reading standards and rules and processes. And one of the skills that you learn in law school is how to try and retain that information or catalog it in a way that's useful for your brain. And as simple as this sounds, as like third grade as this sounds, in my opinion, the best way to remember this information is outlines. As you are reading, outline your work. And I used to do this like written outlines, not just typed outlines. And then I would type up my written outlines. And in that process of writing it down and then organizing it and structuring it and then typing it up and perhaps restructuring it as I go from written to typed, that is the best way, in my opinion, to take really large, complex rule sets and turn them into something logical and progressive that you're able to follow. And when I say outline this and write them down, do not write down the entire rule or the entire code. Right? It is the takeaway. Right? The quick hit version of this. What is the one sentence message or the 3-word message that I'm supposed to take away from this that I can follow and create that cycle or that chart essentially in your mind that allows you to catalog that information. What do you think with regards to these specific standards, Debbie?
Yeah, so I'm unfamiliar with these specific standards and what this person's referring to, since it sounds like they saw me speak in Quebec or watched the video later, was that I mentioned that human-centered design does have ISO standards. They're ISO 9241, and that while most jobs don't require you to know ISO 9241, and in general you can't even get at the standards without paying 155 Swiss francs to download the PDF, I think that especially where companies claim to be ISO 9000 certified or 9001 certified, they have technically agreed to aspects of the 9241 standard, because it's part of the 9000s, and that is human-centered design. And I thought, where possible, we should become more familiar with what's in the 9241 standard, because even though, as David just mentioned in the chat, oh no, it's an obscurely written standard, it is something that is recognized. ISO standards for some people are respected, others not. But I think especially where we're trying to say UX wasn't invented last week, there are real standards around this. It's good to just have some familiarity with that, and especially if companies claim to be certified, then they're supposed to be following that. So as for other ISO standards or IEC standards or reading through patents or whatever, do that at your own risk or pleasure. I think it's great for Greg to take us down the road of how do you better absorb things or understand them or take notes. I also found during my MBA that one thing I liked to do was, after I learned something, I dictated it into my phone or computer, and that way it was like, here's a good point. Instead of highlighting something and keeping going, I said it out loud, and that of course just stimulates more senses. You've seen it, you've said it, you've heard it. You can't taste it or dance it or feel it, but it's just more ways to absorb it from different angles. And if I said a point and I didn't really understand it, I stopped and Googled it for other angles on the same idea. So love the outline idea, and also my way tends to be say it out loud with feeling and make sure I understood what I just said.
I like dance as one of the primary senses now
I've decided
as well.
that.
That's good.
Sorry, now I feel
Yes.
like Ryan George. I've decided. I don't know if anyone watches Ryan George videos.
But I think those sentiments are very similar, right? It's just about re-engaging in a different way with your brain. And for me, that's writing it, right? That physical form of writing it down is what helps me. And for you, it's saying it out loud.
Yeah, right. And we'll say writing is a sense as well, just so we feel better today for inventing
Sure.
new
Yes.
human senses. Okay, our last question today is a little spicy, and we only have 5 minutes, so I think we
Oh,
might have to get to the
okay.
short version of this one, unless you can stay a little bit longer. This says, considering the recent news from IDEO, I'm curious to hear how Greg and Debbie agree and or disagree on the use of design thinking processes and tools in the real world. Please differentiate the iterative process described by traditional design thinking from the practice of running design thinking workshops, which of course takes us right into episode 108 here, where it was, what is design thinking? You know, this person saying, please differentiate between these two things. We're still probably not even sure what they mean by either of them. But Greg, I know design thinking is a term that you tend to use for the work that you do. So tell us your perspective on this and maybe the IDEO news.
Yeah, and I think the very first question in the last session I was at with you was like, what really is design thinking? So I think design thinking at this point, there is a formal definition of it, but in broad general purpose use, it has turned into a bit of a buzzword that means not a lot of things specifically. And I know that IDEO, likes to market themselves as the creators of design thinking. We can have a larger discussion about whether that is entirely accurate. But I, I think it's undeniable, whether or not you believe that IDEO is created design thinking. It's undeniable that IDEO played and plays a large role in developing design thinking in the business world and bringing it to a larger community and frankly, like increasing the UX ecosystem in corporate America. I think I would find it hard to argue against that.
I will argue
And
against
frankly,
that.
okay, all right.
No,
I
but
mean,
go
I'm
ahead.
happy. I think that they are a name brand in design thinking, right? There are many other companies and many other people who are furthering the cause. But, right, it would be like saying, look, CarMax didn't contribute to how we shop for cars in America in some way, right? There are tons of other companies that are doing that, but the company that really came out and said, we're going to sell cars online in a way that dealerships refuse to, changed the game. In that, my opinion is that I think that IDEO did a similar thing in corporate America, especially in Silicon Valley, especially in Fortune 500 companies.
That was the
I
gong
will say,
saying we're almost
though,
out of time.
oh, okay, we're almost out of time. Debbie, I read your post about how like maybe IDEO should have used some design thinking to avoid layoffs. I think that's a fair comment. That said, like I find it hard right now to criticize them too overtly because I don't understand the business realities of that organization. They are, at their core, a consulting firm, right? Just like McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group or EY. And really most of the time what it comes down to with consulting firms when there are layoffs is a lack of business growth and sales development. If they were able to keep bringing clients in the door and paying hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars for their work, then they would continue to employ and grow, right? And that oftentimes it comes down to that. And right now, I think one of the side effects potentially of them growing the UX industry is people are bringing UX in-house and they're not using third parties as often. I think that's certainly true for my work. We have 140 UX researchers internally at Chase right now, which is unheard of a couple of years ago. We have about 1,000 UX professionals. Let's say we didn't have those 1,000 UX professionals. Well, the way that Chase might do that work is by hiring a company like IDEO. And so I suspect that the growth in the UX research industry internally at other companies has probably played a large factor on IDEO's ability to source new clients and retain consistent business. Yeah. I don't know. But again, I don't know anything about the internal workings of their business. So it's really, and I also just really want to be respectful. It's like now is a very easy time to kind of slam IDEO. But there are a lot of people, similar to the last question, outlook is grim. There are a lot of people struggling. These are like the people who are working day in and day out on this are the ones who are out of work. And so I don't want to bash them and say this is what you get or anything like that, because these are real people who are struggling day to day now and who are out of work. So we have to be respectful of that.
And that's where the real empathy comes in. Yeah, and obviously I was bashing IDEO before all of this, so I think I'm a
Yes,
little
of
more
course. Yeah, I know.
comfortable. Yeah, I'm a little more comfortable pointing at them for critical thinking, but certainly agree with you that this is not the fault of anybody who got laid off. They didn't cause this, they couldn't fix this, and I'm sorry that they lost their job for any reason. Whether it's design thinking isn't as cool as it used to be, or they cannibalized their own ecosystem by trying to teach people you can do what we do. Also, I'd pointed out yesterday as well that they'd had a number of articles come out during the pandemic where people were blowing the whistle on kind of difficult workplaces and some of the harassment people got while working there, some racism, some colonialist attitudes and behaviors that were being kind of called out. So I think that it's possible that if they are having a difficult time, number one, they're in the same boat with many other companies right now. I don't think they're doing anything special. They're in the same struggle everyone else is in. And number two, I think there will be larger questions about what does this mean for IDEO or design thinking, but I don't think we can know that yet. I remember last year IDEO claimed they were going to revamp design thinking and come out with something new, which hypothetically could have refreshed the training business, since the usual sales pitch is, and you need more training now that we have the new thing. But perhaps that's a tough sell right now as well. So again, neither of us know internally what happened there. I do have some schadenfreude, but not mostly for IDEO. I think there are a couple of other companies who I might celebrate failure more, but I do hope that we can get back to better human-centered design. And if that's what you've been calling design thinking, then hooray, do great human-centered design. But if your human-centered design or design thinking is really watered down, minimal, measured in hours, mostly workshopped and by community, I hope companies will grow past that. And even ones that felt design thinking was working for them, I say, great, that's a start. There's so much more that you could be doing. Think of it more as a stepping stone than as the end all and be all of a thing.
Agreed. Well said.
Doing what I can. All right. Well, I owe you a lobster dinner for your patience with my interwebs today. Greg, if I'm on the East Coast, lobster dinner of your choice if you eat lobster. Otherwise, vegetarian lobster. So please remind everybody how they can find you and connect with you if you are a connectable person.
Yeah, I think I technically have a Twitter that I never use. So honestly, my social media of choice at this point is LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, Greg Marinelli, spelled down here for those who are just listening. It's Marinelli. Follow me there. I apologize in advance for not connecting with you because I have like 600 connection requests and I don't look at them a lot at this point. I will say, because I always get these, like, please do not send me a connection request and just say, can you get me a job? I get those too often. Surprising amount. That's not, for any of you, general advice, that's not the way.
That was a question in last week's AMA. I wish you'd been here. Someone said, can I just if I like a company, can I just write to them and apply for a job that doesn't exist?
Well, not a large company like mine. Maybe at a startup, but not at JP Morgan Chase. But please follow me on LinkedIn. Let's stay connected. I'll be back on Debbie's program again. So follow Delta CX and you'll see more of me.
You are too kind and generous and patient with today's episode. Greg, thank you so much. Have a super end of your year. Based on our cadence, I guess I'll see you in spring. Thanks to everybody who joined. And I will set the screen on fire and say thanks and goodbye. Bye, everybody.
Lovely to see you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again.